Welcome to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3. And this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's table topic is most certainly a table topic, pun intended. We're talking about the stranglehold on our farmers. What if I told you that there was a silent war that's waging as we speak, and that it doesn't include any type of guns or bombs or anything like that, but if America doesn't win this war, death is inevitable? What am I talking about? I'm talking about the war for our farmland and against our farmers. If we lose our ability to feed ourselves, we die. And none of the social wars or any of the other topics will matter if you are starving to death. So yes, it is dire. Many today believe that our food comes from the grocery store, but the truth is, it comes from our farmers. And due to overregulation and foreign buyers, to name a few, our farmers are being strangled. We must deal with the reality of the American dinner table versus the reality of the American dirt. We aren't just losing businesses, we're losing the backbone of our sovereignty. And if you don't think a food crisis can happen in the land of plenty, then you aren't paying attention to the policy-driven noose that is tightening around the necks of our farmers. You know, there used to be a saying in this country, the farmer's the only man in the economy who buys everything at retail, sells everything at wholesale, and pays the freight both ways. Over a century, that was the badge of honor to be a farmer. It was a testament to the grit of the American family. But today, that grit is being ground into the dirt by bureaucratic machines that don't care about your legacy. It only cares about its agenda. So we're talking about this great liquidation that's happening of our farmland. I want you to picture a farm in America. It's been in the same family since the 90s. The dirt has the blood, sweat, and literal tears of 4 generations soaked into it. It survived the Great Depression. It survived the Dust Bowl. It survived world wars. But you know what? It can't survive Washington, D.C. So we are watching a systemic transition from legacy to liquidation. And it starts with the death tax, a disgusting un-American grab that punishes a son or daughter for the crime of wanting to walk in his or her father's footsteps. While the liberal elites in their high rises talk about equity, they're busy stripping equity out of the American farm. They've made it so that when a patriarch passes away, the kids don't just inherit a tractor and a title. They inherit a tax bill so massive that they would have to sell the very land that they just inherited and the land that they were born to protect. And who's buying it? It's not the neighbor down the road. It's the massive soulless corporate conglomerates. It's the billionaire philanthropists who want to tell you what kind of synthetic meat you're allowed to eat. It's the investment firms who sees your family's heritage as nothing more than a line item on a balance sheet. This isn't just the market at work, folks. This is a forced exit. And when the EPA moves the goalposts on what you can do with your own water, when the Green New Deal crowd make diesel too expensive to run a combine, and when the banks, pressured by radical ESG scores, decides a small family farm is a climate risk, the farmer is backed into a corner. They aren't retiring, they're being driven out. Every time a for sale sign goes up on a multi-generational farm, a piece of the American soul dies. We are replacing independent, God-fearing families with corporate boardrooms and foreign interests. And if we don't stop this, we aren't just losing our farmers, we're going to lose our freedoms. Because a nation that can't feed itself, owned by people who don't love it, is a nation that won't be a nation much longer. So let's get into the how. How does a government that claims to love the little guy manage to systemically wipe him off the map? It's not by accident. It's a feature, not a bug. It's called regulatory capture, and it's the sharpest blade in the globalist toolkit. I want you to think about the paperwork. To a liberal bureaucrat in a climate-controlled office, a new sustainability mandate or a 500-page EPA report requirement is just another Tuesday. But to a farmer who's already working 14 hours a day in the sun, it's a death sentence. And here's the dirty little secret of big government. Regulation is a barrier to entry. When the federal government passes these massive, convoluted mandates, whether it's tracking every carbon emission from a cow or requiring high-tech green certified equipment, who do you think wins? It sure isn't the guy with 3 tractors and a mortgage. No, it's the massive corporate firms, the big ag giants. To be clear, I am not against business success, and I do think that you should work as hard as you would like to and make as much profit as you can. But what I can't support is using your money to buy policy. Because these companies have entire floors of buildings filled with lawyers, compliance officers, who only work is to navigate the red tape. They can afford the $100,000 environmental impact studies. They can afford the army of accountants and to find the loopholes in the tax code that they helped write in the first place. But then you have the independent farmer. He's his own mechanic, and that's only if he has a tractor that allows him to work on it. Because there's some John Deere tractors where you have to bring in a technician. You can no longer just work on your own tractor anymore. And in many cases, he is his own vet. He's his own laborer. He doesn't have a chief sustainability officer. So when the government adds another layer of mandatory reporting, he's faced with a choice. Do I spend my nights staring at a computer screen instead of sleeping? Or do I pay a fine that eats my entire profit margin for the year? This is how they tax you into extinction without ever raising your income tax. They drive up the cost of doing business so high that only the giants can survive. It's the pay-to-play system. The government creates the red tape, the corporations provide the solution, and the family farmer gets squeezed in the middle until he or she has no choice but to sell out to the very corporation that lobbied for the regulation that put them in this place in the first place. It's a sick cycle. We're moving towards a feudal system where a few approved mega corporations own all of the land because they're the only ones who can afford to keep the bureaucrats happy. They want to turn our independent producers into contract growers, essentially serfs on their own land, beholden to a corporate master and a federal regulator. They don't want a man who can think for himself and provide for his community and his family. They want a cog in the globalist machine. And if we don't start slashing these mandates and getting the government's hands out of the dirt, the family farm will be nothing more than a picture in a history book. You know, as kitchen table debaters, we must have a complete picture of what our farmers are facing. It saddens me how much our farmers are overlooked. How many times they come up to us while we're on the trail as my husband's running for office, and they'll say things to us like, man, it's really hard. It's tight. It makes me really sad because it feels like they have no hope and no help. But these are some of the toughest people you'll ever meet because they refuse to give up on their farms. So many of them are working every day, day in and day out, knowing that they will not make a profit, hoping that this harvest is the harvest. This is happening right now. So after the break, we will dive much deeper into some of the tallest hurdles facing our farmers today. We're just getting started. You're listening to The Janelle King Show right here on Extra 106.3. Don't leave the table.
The left is siding with illegals, attacking ICE, and fighting to let non-citizens vote. Republican Kelvin King is a graduate of the Air Force Academy, Air Force veteran, and conservative businessman. As Georgia's Secretary of State, Kelvin will put Americans first, root out corruption, clean up voter rolls, and restore confidence in our elections. The other candidates had their chance and failed. Republican Kelvin King for Secretary of State, leadership Georgia voters can trust.
Hello, everyone. My name is Suzanne Guy, and this is the Church's Moment. There is an incredible opportunity to start a distinct pro-life ministry at your church. We started one at our church about 5 years ago, and the fruit has been tangibly beautiful. We do monthly meetings that educate and equip the body of believers on sanctity of human life issues from womb to tomb by bringing in and featuring different pro-life leaders from all over Georgia, as well as featuring different ministries like post-abortion healing ministries or foster care ministries. There are so many great community partners out there. And then the second part of this pro-life ministry is having a care team. This is an opportunity to show moms in crisis, moms in unplanned, unwanted, or crisis pregnancies that the church is the place to run to, that the church is a safe haven and a place to go for tangible help, real hope, true compassion, friendship, and discipleship. And yes, an opportunity to share the gospel in both word and deed. Brothers and sisters in Christ, will you consider starting a distinct pro-life ministry at your church? It's so easy. Please contact me today to find out how simple this is. You can contact me at my email, proverbs31:8@att.net. This is the church's moment.
Republican Kelvin King is running for Secretary of State to end corruption. Kelvin believes the Secretary of State must be our last line of defense against corruption in our elections. But candidate Gabriel Sterling grabbed a massive no-bid sweetheart deal for himself. He took nearly $250,000 a year of your hard-earned tax dollars with no other bidders. A feeding trough for insiders. Kelvin King will stop Sterling's no-bid deals. It's your money.
Welcome back to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3. And this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's table topic is just that. It is a topic for the table. We're talking about the stranglehold on our farmers. Now, before the break, I laid out the how the regulation, the red tape is affecting our farmers. And now let's talk about the who and the where, because this is a national security crisis. From the CCP land grab while Washington regulates our farmers into bankruptcy, they're letting the Chinese Communist Party buy the literal ground beneath us. We're talking about nearly 400,000 acres of American soil now in the hands of the CCP-linked entities. And look at the map. They aren't just buying random dirt. They are strategically snatching up land near our sensitive military bases. Why is our government letting this happen? Why are they allowing them to build listening posts in our own backyard? We're going to dive a lot deeper into that in just a bit. Then we have the economic squeeze, and then there's the green fog, which we will touch on more in just a few, where you have DC bureaucrats who are obsessed with carbon footprints while American farmers are just trying to survive, input costs and fuel and seed and fertilizer, and all of that being at a record high, but the prices farmers get for their crops are stagnant. It's an engineered bankruptcy driven by liberal-led inflation. And what is the human cost? Why is this so important? Because farmers are dying by suicide at over 3 times the national average. They're aging out. We are aging out, our experts. And the average farmer now is nearly 60 years old. So we're pricing out our youth. We're also losing our sovereignty 1 acre at a time. And if you don't stop this green fantasies and the foreign land grabs, we won't just be out of business, we'll be out of a country. So let's dive into this very serious topic a little deeper. Let's talk about the green fog that has settled over DC for the last few decades. If you listen to the ivory tower academics and the career bureaucrats, they'll tell you that they're saving the planet. But if you talk to a man who actually has dirt under his fingernails, he'll tell you that they're destroying the very foundation of our food security. We are living through an era where green fantasies are being prioritized over reality. For years, we've seen a Washington knows best attitude that treats the American farmer not as a steward of the land, but as an obstacle towards their utopia. They want to talk about carbon footprints, while the farmer is just trying to keep his boots on the ground. Take the war on fertilizer, for example. The radical environmentalists want to regulate nitrogen into the Stone Age because of emissions. But here in the real world, nitrogen is what makes corn grow. It's what makes a lot of crops grow. You can't feed 330 million Americans on good vibes and solar panels. You need fuel. You need fertilizer. You need the freedom to use them. And you need the knowledge to know how nitrogen is created and where you can find it. And let's look at The solar land grab. We have government subsidies, your tax dollars that are pouring into green energy projects that are incentivizing the paving over of some of the most fertile soil on God's green earth. They're replacing tractors with glass panels. They tell us it's progress, but you can't eat solar cells, folks. They're literally taking the food out of food security to satisfy a climate cult that hasn't spent a single day in the Pharaoh. Then you have the methane mandates. They want to crack down on every burp and gas from a cow. They're trying to regulate livestock out of existence under the guise of saving the air. It's a direct assault on the American rancher. While they fly their private jets and to these climate summits in Davos, they're telling the guy in Nebraska that his cattle are the problem, that his cattle's gas is the problem. Especially when you have ranchers who are feeding their cows good grass, nicely grass-fed, strong, healthy animals. And you're telling me that their gas is like emitting toxins in the air that's going to choke us all to death? So now we have farmers that have to regulate the gas production if their cow is burping. It is the height of arrogance. These policies aren't based on the reality of the season or the cycle of the crop. They are based on models created in rooms where there's no windows or the windows don't even open. They've traded common sense for climate justice, and the bill is being paid by American families at the grocery store. We don't need green mandates from people who can't tell you a combine from a cultivator. We need to get the bureaucrats out of the barn and let the American farmer do what he does best, and that's feed the world and protect the land. Because at the end of the day, there's nothing greener than a healthy, independent American farm. Now let's talk about the shadow police of the American heartland. I'm talking about the EPA. For decades, this agency operated like a law unto itself, armed with vaguely worded hammers like the waters of the United States, WOTUS. That is a product of the 1972 Clean Water Act. And on paper, WOTUS is supposed to protect our navigable rivers and lakes. Sounds reasonable. It sounds right. But in the hands of a radical Washington knows best bureaucracy, it became a weapon for the most audacious land grab in our history. Because under the liberal definitions we've fought for years, the EPA decided that navigable waters didn't just mean the Mississippi River. It now means the dry ditch in your back pasture. It now meant the puddle that appears after a heavy rain. It meant the low spot in your field that hasn't seen a drop of water since the Nixon administration. And here's where it gets criminal. Literally criminal. Under these rules, the federal government treats the American farmer like a felon for the crime of moving dirt on his own property.
The federal government is wonderful at coming up with acronyms. It's called WOTUS, Waters of the United States.
And these ditches are all over Seneca, right? Because this used to be swampland.
Correct. Northwest Ohio used to be the Great Black Swamp. This one is a deep one for around here. You would have to have a permit from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers with this WOTUS. And it would extend the time frame for, let's say, cleaning the ditch, which time is money, increasing our costs. A lot of paperwork for paperwork's sake that duplication of items we already have to do with USDA for the farm program. That's another, I'm putting that in parentheses.
I want you to think about that. You want to clear a drainage ditch for your crops so that they don't rot. You want to level a field to prevent erosion. If the EPA decides that dry patch of land is a jurisdictional wetland, they don't just send you a polite letter. They come to you with the full force of the federal government. We're talking about fines that can reach $40 to $60 per day. Per day for moving dirt. You know, my husband had to fight the EPA because he was doing a project. He was the contractor that they brought into, I think it was to demolition a old building. And there were people in the community who didn't want it to go down or be demolished. And from my understanding of the story, he provided paperwork, but the paperwork got lost on the local office and didn't make it to the EPA. And the EPA threatened to fine him something like this, $40 or something thousand dollars or more a day until they corrected. And my husband was like, I did send it in. I sent it in. And he was able to plead his case as a small company, a small general contractor fighting the big old EPA, and he won. Thank God he won. But that's because he had all of his ducks in a row, and that's because my husband has a huge administrative background due to being a contracting officer in the Air Force. But we're talking about farmers who don't have that type of background, that now have to fight up against the EPA, and of course they're going to just do what they're told, because who has $40,000 to $60,000 to give them per day? Especially when your farm is already not doing well. They've used these regulations to freeze family farms in their tracks, interrupting good men and women who are just trying to maintain the land. It's a guilty until proven innocent system, where the farmer has to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on consultants and lawyers just to prove that a dry hole in the ground isn't a stream to the Pacific Ocean. So let's continue this by cutting through the noise and looking at this battlefield that we are on. We've seen a few victories lately. The Supreme Court's Sackett decision finally put a leash on the EPA's significant nexus nonsense. But don't be fooled. The green bureaucrats are still in those offices and they're still waiting to tighten that noose. To them, you aren't a landholder. You are a tenant on their planet. They don't see property rights. They see ecosystems that need to be managed by people who have never owned a pair of work boots. It's time to stop the lawfare. American soil belongs to American farmers, not a federal agency looking for its next victim. If a man can't move a shovel of dirt on his own land without fearing a federal indictment, we are not living in a republic. We are living under a dictator. But they aren't just using the law, they're also using the banks. And it's called ESG, environmental, social, and governance. To the elites in Davos, it's a framework. To the American farmer, it's a financial hit list. Banks are now using ESG scores to decide if you are compliant enough for a loan. Don't use the right fertilizer. That's a ding. Don't have the right diversity on your crew. Another ding. Your risk profile goes up and your credit disappears. They're cutting off the oxygen to the American farm. They want to turn you into a carbon accountant, selling credits for pennies while they tax your diesel and nitrogen into the stratosphere. It's a trap designed to make profit impossible. And when you can't pay the mortgage, who's standing there with the checkbook? The same corporate giants and foreign interests that help to create the rules. And that brings me to the most dangerous piece of this puzzle. As I mentioned briefly in the opening segment, while DC regulates you into bankruptcy, they're holding the door open wide for the Chinese Communist Party because the numbers, they just don't lie. According to official records from the United States Department of Agriculture, the USDA, specifically data collected under the Agricultural Foreign Investment Disclosure Act of 1978, Chinese linked entities now own 384,000 acres of our land. That's twice the size of New York City. And if you look at the map, they're buying land right next to our most sensitive military bases, like Grand Forks Air Force Base in North Dakota. A Chinese company tried to build a massive corn mill just 12 miles from a base that houses our most advanced drone technology. And then there's Laughlin Air Force Base in Texas. A former Chinese military officer bought over 130,000 acres near this vital pilot training site. And then you have F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming. We've seen land grabs near the very silos that house our nuclear deterrents. So why does a CCP backed company need land 12 miles from our drone base to mill corn? They don't. They're buying listening posts.
The Communist Party is buying up farmland in North Dakota. But there's a problem. The land is near a military base, and lawmakers are voicing concerns. That's as Huawei is reportedly caught sniffing around U.S. nuclear sites. The Chinese telecom giant has been installing its gear close to the facilities. With it, the FBI says the company may be able to disrupt U.S. military communications. A report shows the Chinese regime is building a network of informants inside America's central banking system. And some Americans are more willing to share their DNA with genetics companies, hoping to learn more about their health and heritage. But a lawmaker is warning against the services. He says foreign adversaries could use it to make targeted bioweapons. The Chinese regime is buying up farmland in North Dakota. The problem is the plots of land are really close to a U.S. Air Force base. Now, American officials are raising concerns. Could the Chinese Communist Party use the land to spy on the U.S. military? The Grand Forks Air Force Base is home to some of the country's most sensitive military technology. That includes drone technology used for space and satellite operations. The base is also home to a networking center. A local senator says it handles the backbone of all U.S. military communications across the globe. The land purchase is a $2.6 billion deal by Chinese company Fufeng Group. The city's mayor has pushed for the project, which he said is the largest single investment in the city's history. But some locals don't like the deal. One of the land sellers, Gary Bridgeford, told CNBC he had been called every name in the book by his neighbors for selling the property. Former telecom executive John Pelson told us it's not the amount of land China is buying that's the most concerning. It's where they are buying it.
But if you're building $700 million worth of corn milling and processing, which is what the Chinese company supposedly wants to do, there's going to be every opportunity there to make this an eavesdropping site. And there was no credibility, in my opinion, to the story about why they had to pick that location, which they acknowledged isn't near their customers, is far north for where they would have otherwise put it, and is the only location they're going to have in the United States. They decided that North Dakota was a place to be.
A representative for the Fufeng Group's U.S. subsidiary denied the espionage accusations. China has a pattern of buying American land near sensitive military locations. In 2021, a former Chinese military official bought 130,000 acres of land close to Laughlin Air Base in Texas. The land bought by China surrounds that sensitive air base. Lawmakers and officials from both parties, including Elizabeth Warren and Mike Pence, have raised concerns about it. As part of the land purchases, China has been growing its presence in the American food system. In total, as of 2020, Chinese investors had bought almost 200,000 acres of farmland, worth a value of $1.9 billion. Along the same line, North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer shares his reaction to the Chinese purchase of the farmland in his home state. Let's zoom in.
Senator Kevin Cramer, thank you so much for joining us in the Capitol Report.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity and for the interest in this story.
Senator, a company in your home state of North Dakota with close ties to the Chinese regime has recently purchased 300 acres of farmland. This purchase is raising some concerns. What are some of those concerns?
Well, there's one very specific concern that has a lot of people focused on it, and that is that it's in fairly close proximity to the Grand Forks Air Force Base. The Grand Forks Air Force Base is a very important ISR mission. We right now fly Global Hawks around the world. They're very important surveillance, as you know, aircraft. We also just a couple of weeks ago cut the ribbon on a new Space Development Agency facility at the base that will be the first ground station for what's called Tranche 1 of the low orbiting satellites low Earth orbiting satellites. And obviously that surveillance capability includes the uplinks and downlinks of lots of data and whatnot. So the prospect of the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, which is obviously quite well known for its ability to spy and its willingness to spy and steal.
Chinese ownership of our land has exploded by 2,000% since 2010. And while we count carbon credits, they're counting our missile silos. This is an act of war, and we need to ban the CCP from owning a single square inch of American soil, period. And finally, look at the math that Washington's ignoring. We are in an economic crisis. If you input costs, fertilizer, fuel, seed, they're all at record highs, while commodity prices are stagnant. You're being asked to pay 2026 costs, but sell at 2010 values. It's an engineered bankruptcy, and it's led to a silent epidemic. You guys, farmers are dying by suicide at 4 times the national average. These are people who fed us, and they are being suffocated by debt and regulation, while the empathy crowd in D.C. stays silent. We are aging out our experts. The average farmer is nearly 60 years old, and we're pricing out our youth with liberal-led inflation. If we don't slash the regulation and fix the money, we won't just be importing electronics from China. We will be begging them for our bread. So guys and gals, this is very serious. And I have some strong words to our leaders, and I also have some encouraging words to our farmers after the break. You're listening to The Janelle King Show right here on Extra 106.3. We're almost done. Don't leave the table.
The left is siding with illegals, attacking ICE, and fighting to let non-citizens vote. Republican Kelvin King is a graduate of the Air Force Academy, Air Force veteran, and conservative businessman. As Georgia's Secretary of State, Kelvin will put Americans first, root out corruption, clean up voter rolls, and restore confidence in our elections. The other candidates had their chance and failed. Republican Kelvin King for Secretary of State, leadership Georgia voters can trust.
Hello, everyone. My name is Suzanne Guy, and this is the Church's Moment. There is an incredible opportunity to start a distinct pro-life ministry at your church. We started one at our church about 5 years ago, and the fruit has been tangibly beautiful. We do monthly meetings that educate and equip the body of believers on sanctity of human life issues from womb to tomb by bringing in and featuring different pro-life leaders from all over Georgia, as well as featuring different ministries like post-abortion healing ministries or foster care ministries. There are so many great community partners out there. And then the second part of this pro-life ministry is having a care team. This is an opportunity to show moms in crisis, moms in unplanned, unwanted, or crisis pregnancies, that the church is the place to run to, that the church is a safe haven and a place to go for tangible help, real hope, true compassion, friendship, and discipleship, and yes, an opportunity to share the gospel in both word and deed. Brothers and sisters in Christ, will you consider starting a distinct pro-life ministry at your church? It's so easy. Please contact me today to find out how simple this is. You can contact me at my email, proverbs318@att.net. This is the Church's Moment.
I see that as the biggest threat, government overreach, especially when it deals with like manure handling, which is something that, for thousands of years it's been a fertilizer, and now they're wanting to treat it like an industrial waste product, and to treat it as industrial waste is going to put most of us out of business. When we start putting other people in between us and the customers, then who don't have the same values at all, and they really have no skin in the game other than it seems like the motive is to make us stop doing business.
Welcome back to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3, and this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's table topic is the stranglehold on our farmers. And in case you're joining for the first time, you can always go to my YouTube page, just search the Janelle King Show and catch the show, or You can listen to the encore episode right here on Extra 106.3 tomorrow morning, Sunday morning at 9 a.m., or wherever you get your podcasts. Every Tuesday, the podcast drops, including right here on Extra at the Podcast Park. So we've covered a lot of ground today, and none of it is easy to hear. We've looked at how decades of Washington knows best policies have tightened the noose around our heartland. We've exposed the great liquidation, the death of family legacies at the hands of the EPA, and the radical ESG scores that treat our food producers like environmental criminals. We've seen the map of our country being carved up by the CCP, standing in the shadow of our missile silos, while we are told that there's nothing to worry about, or that we should only worry about carbon footprints. This isn't just another policy debate. This is about the dirt. It's about the blood. It's about whether your children, our children, my grandchildren, will inherit a free republic or a corporate plantation. It's time to wake up. We focus so much on the theater in D.C., but I'm telling you, we've got to start paying attention to our state races. We have critical elections for ag commissioners and across the country. These are the people who stand between you and the federal bureaucrats. They're supposed to be representing you and fighting for you. They are the frontline defenders of your property rights and your state sovereignty. Know who is on your ballot. Know who they are. Ask them the tough questions. Ask them where they stand on foreign land grabs. Ask them if they'll fight the ESG bank cartels. And look at the USDA while we have finally have leadership like Secretary Brooke Rollins pushing for this America First agenda to put our farmers above globalist research and the green deep state. But the green deep state is still there, just waiting on you to stop paying attention. Don't let them. And to my farmers, to the men and women out there in the cab of a tractor or checking the fences at 4 a.m., we see you. We know you're tired. We know the math is not mathing, and it doesn't make a lot of sense right now. We know the weight you're carrying is heavier than any harvest, but do not give up. You are the backbone of our nation, and there is a remnant of Americans who are waking up and who are ready to stand with you. We are praying for your strength, for your families, and for the rain. And we are voting to get the government's boot off of your back. In closing, become a personal farmer to someone. Buy local. Know your producer. Because when the grocery store shelves reflect the green fantasies of the elite, the only thing that will matter is the relationship you have with the person who actually grows the food, the farmer that's in your community. I want to leave you with a message that I found from someone who has been sounding the alarm, Glenn Beck. He recently shared a heartfelt message to us on behalf of our farmers and what we must do to prevent the storm that is coming. So I want to leave you with his message. So stay unafraid, stay unapologetic, and never stop seeking the truth. Now here's Glenn Beck.
A monster drought has swallowed 60% of the lower 48 states. You haven't heard about this, but it is true. The NOAA maps don't lie. The South is baked, sugarcane, rice, peanuts, fruit trees, choking under severe, extreme, and even exceptional drought. Out in the plains, where that's our bread basket, winter wheat is sitting in dust. It can't germinate because it doesn't have the water. In the West, the mountain snowpack is vanishing before our eyes. I mean, I am shocked. I'm here in the Mountain West. We normally have snow up on the mountains all around me. We don't have snow. I mean, we have some and really high elevations, but usually on the mountain right behind my ranch, we have snow up there at this time. It snowed yesterday, but nothing stuck because it's too warm. So you don't have that snow. And now, at least here in Idaho, cutbacks on water are already being talked about. They're being ordered along the Colorado River in Washington State, the Yakima Basin, which has a lot of our food up there. And ranchers are staring at pastures now that they won't grow. The pastures are, the cattle herd is already the smallest it's been since the 1950s. And it's not happening in a vacuum. Farmers have been hammered for years for the skyrocketing fertilizer prices that happened, remember, after COVID. Diesel costs that have taken their profit margin and just squeezed everything out of it. Supply chain chaos, one hit after another hit after another hit have kept these guys barely hanging on. And now we have another fertilizer hit. And now pile the drought on top of that. The math is brutal. Math is math. Food costs are going up, and not a little, a lot. Beef, grains, produce, everything that comes from the fields all across our fruited plain is going to cost more at the grocery store, and it's coming sooner and faster than most people want to even admit. So I ask, because what we do in our community, we have faced droughts up here in this small little farming community, and every church from the pulpit is saying, fast and pray for rain. And I'm telling you, it works. I'm asking you to fast and pray for rain all across the country. I'm asking you to fast and pray for our farmers, because our farmers are under extreme stress. You don't think you care about the farmer? Wait until you can't eat. Wait until you have a problem with a dust bowl. Wait until you can't afford food, even more than you can't afford it right now. You care about the farmers. You just don't see farmers. But they are probably the most important cog in the chain of this machinery. The other thing I want to tell you is you got to stop depending on this system. You have to spit yourself out of this system. It is cracking under the weight of weather or war or economics. I have to tell you, I'm going to tell you something about the Fed on Monday that is just shocking and horrifying. Just horrifying. And it'll explain an awful lot of stuff, but it'll also tell you what's coming. It is really important that you become food independent as possible. If you don't have food storage, you should. If you have a scrap of yard, plant a garden this spring. Tomatoes, beans, potatoes, greens, anything you can grow, anything. If you don't have space or you've never done it before, go start talking to your neighbors. Start a neighborhood garden. Share the work, share the harvest, share the knowledge. Get your kids involved. Put up what you grow. It's not enough to have just a whole bunch of beans. Stock it up. Learn how to preserve it. Stock a little extra when you can. Prepare. Because this isn't just about rain or fertilizer prices, market prices. It's not. It's really not. We are in a spiritual war. And I'm telling you, the very gates of hell will come against us in the days ahead.